Hey, hello, everyone. Good morning. My name's Ramsey Cohen. I work with Clayton Homes. Vast majority of my career, pretty much my entire adult life, has been working in the manufactured homes industry and for Clayton. Really excited to be here today to talk about something very near and dear to my heart, manufactured housing, and the ways that it can play as a solution to the critical need for attainable housing in our country today. I've got a fantastic panel here with me. I'll introduce now. To my left is Erin Persons with Freddie Mac. Erin serves as the director of Duty to Serve at Freddie Mac. She has an expertise in single-family housing with previous experience at Auction.com as well as NCST for over 13 years in a variety of positions. At Freddie Mac, she oversees the Duty to Serve program established to ease manufactured housing, rural housing financing, and other housing options for families in underserved communities while preserving the affordability of these homes over time. Next is Stacy Epperson with Next Step. Stacy Epperson's manufactured housing work began in Appalachia as a response to families living in outdated mobile homes. And for a decade, she served as the president and CEO of Frontier Housing, a housing nonprofit based in Eastern Kentucky. In 2011, she founded Next Step Network, an organization working to transform the manufactured housing industry through consumer education, affordability, and energy efficiency. Next Step is also a member organization of NCST's Homeownership Alliance. And then Dr. Leslie Gooch with Manufactured Housing Institute. Dr. Leslie Gooch is the Chief Executive Officer of Manufactured Housing Institute, or MHI. Dr. Gooch has assembled a strong team that, under her leadership, has secured a number of key legislative and regulatory accomplishments to elevate manufactured housing within Congress and the administration. Dr. Gooch joined MHI after serving across a variety of vantage points in Washington, including as a congressional staff member, congressional candidate, lobbyist, and political scientist focused on Congress. She has served on both Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's affordable housing advisory committees. Dr. Gooch has been recognized for 3 consecutive years as one of Housing Wire's Women of Influence for her efforts to elevate housing, innovation, and expand attainable home ownership. So thank you guys so much for joining us here today. I think as we get started, a lot of times I know that with our industry, a lot of folks come from outside it, right, and don't fully know, understand, or are aware of all the different aspects of manufactured housing. So I think some level setting is always important. And a major goal for all of us here today is to work together to develop innovative solutions that ultimately increase that supply of affordable housing. And I'm just wondering if you guys could speak to where and how you see manufactured housing playing as a role in that attainable housing supply gap and how we close it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can get started. Shout out to my NCST friends. So Freddie Mac's Economic and Housing Research Group estimates a few years ago that the U.S. had a housing supply deficit of 3.8 million units at the end of 2020. Then between 2018 and 2020, the deficit grew by approximately 52%. The gap has likely widened since then. The National Association of Realtors Housing Affordability Index for the second quarter of 2024 was the lowest in 30 years. The number of entry-level homes, which are homes that are 1,400 square feet or smaller, represents less than 10% of all newly constructed homes, compared to about 35% in the 1970s. Also, more than half of respondents to a 2023 Freddie Mac consumer survey stated that their home's environmental footprint was important to them, and that number rose to 60% for millennials responding. Those numbers highlight the opportunity and the need for manufactured homes to play a larger role in the U.S. housing market. Manufactured homes built since 2000 average about 1,400 square feet in size. The construction standards and efficiencies help to lower costs, time to market, and most importantly, based on those survey results, environmental impacts. Yet manufactured homes compose only around 6% of existing and 10% of new homes today. The younger generations of home buyers, in particular, millennials and Gen Z, appreciate the quality, the amenities, and the price points of today's manufactured homes, as well as the newer designs, such as CrossMod. And they're starting to attract home buyers who might not have considered buying manufactured homes before. If you have not been in today's manufactured home, get yourself out there to see one of these homes. So much nicer than my own home that I live in. The conditions are probably more favorable than ever before for manufactured homes to become, if not one of the more prominent housing options.
Yeah, excellent. I think, as we get into it, Leslie, could you help us understand some of those terms? Because, Aaron used manufactured housing. A lot of times people use, mobile homes or the dreaded T word.
Yes.
Could you help us, by defining those mobile, manufactured, cross-mod so everyone understands those unique categories within our industry?
Absolutely, and thank you, Aaron, for giving an overview of the industry. We really are excited about what our industry can do to address the affordable housing supply shortages that the nation faces. When you talk about a brand new manufactured home that's built to a federal building code, we're the only form of single-family housing that is built with that federal seal of approval. That is what entry-level home buyers are seeking today. Obviously, it's an all-of-the-above solution when you talk about, home renovations, fixing up older housing, maybe converting buildings into units. It's all of the above. But what we find is that to offer that traditional style home with the square footage that people are seeking today, and the features are the design features that people want in a brand new home based on how they live today. And again, it's built with quality and energy efficiency, all to this federal building code. So that's a manufactured home. 50 years ago, this year, it was actually August 22nd, 1974, the president at the time signed into law the bill that created the partnership between HUD and the manufactured housing industry. And what that bill said is that a home would be constructed in a factory in accordance with a federal building standard, and that house could be constructed in one state and transported over state lines to another state to be placed and become someone's home. So that's what, in federal law, the definition of a manufactured home is. We have HUD inspectors in our factories. The regulatory efficiencies that come after the 50 years of having this partnership have really created a situation where HUD code manufactured homes are the most affordable across the board. There are other types of factory-built housing. Many of you have probably heard of modular homes. Those are also built in the factory, but they're not built to the federal code. They're built to a state or a local building code. And what that means is the efficiencies of the factory exist, but the regulatory efficiencies that we have, where those inspectors looking at the electrical and the plumbing and the construction, that's all taking place along the assembly line versus having to call and say, okay, we're ready, come out. Time is money. And so that's why you'll see that modular homes, even if they look identical to a manufactured home, they are going to be at a higher price point. So it's really our goal to bring more homes, more home types under that federal building code. And what we have now, Aaron mentioned the cross-mod. That's a new style of home. We like that range of houses. This is where you've got the increased roof pitch, and you've got features that make that house indistinguishable from a home where the materials are brought on site and constructed, what we call a site-built home. We do need to talk about the M word, mobile home. Or it's not like the T word, trailer, mobile home.
Yeah, mobile home, yeah. It gets thrown around a lot.
A mobile home is a home that was built before there was a federal building code. The building code came up in 1976. First, HUD and the industry had to develop that partnership, and then 2 years later, in 1976, we had the HUD code, and that's where manufactured homes were born. Anything that was constructed before that is a mobile home. The challenge we have today is that people get the terms confused, but we also have a challenge because you've got about 30% of that housing stock. If you look at census data, they put it all together, right? And so when you're talking about manufactured mobile homes, it's like 30% of them are still mobile homes. And so we do have a need as a country to try to replace some of that older housing stock. And those are, so when you hear about mobile homes, that's what they're talking about. It's the homes that were built prior to 1976. There's also panelized construction. That's when they're bringing pieces to the home site and building. Ours, when the home leaves the factory, it's already got that federal seal of approval. It's done. And so when you see other things out there, to me, the most important thing that I want you all to remember is the most important thing is to make sure that house is built to a residential building code. We really believe in the HUD code, but as new styles, we've got accessory dwelling units, we've got duplexes, we've got single family, all the way up to cross mod, single section, multi-section cross mod. But it's really important as these solutions are developed that you do ask the question about, is this built, what code is this built to? Is this built to a code? What we're finding today is that sometimes, some of these new ideas and codes, they're built maybe to the RV code, and that's not for permanent residents. And so it is important for safety and sustainability that they are built to a code.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that overview and explanation. I think one of my favorite ways to, really easily think about the HUD code, right, is that it is the framework that creates the engine that allows our industry to function, right? It is critical to us being able to deliver homes at the price points that we do. And I have to hold myself back to not immediately shift to talk only about CrossMod because I am so passionate about it. So we will get to that in a bit. But Stacy, I'm wondering if you can share with us some of the myths and stigmas and things that exist around our industry, because I think you have a unique perspective, having come from outside the industry to learning more about it and turning into a real advocate for what manufactured housing can do.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, Ramsey. So I think Leslie did a lovely job of explaining, all the types of factory-built homes. So we've all, kind of on the same page now, right? And one thing we do at Next Step is we like to change your hearts and your minds about manufactured housing. And so part of that is really kind of digging in and understanding the myths, if you will. So we're myth busters, okay? And, these misunderstandings are amplified in popular culture and media, right? If we can think about, okay, the tornadoes happened and, what happens in media, so we call everything a mobile home, right? When perhaps it's a manufactured home. And at Next Step, we believe a home is a home. So, that's the most important thing, that regardless of all these home types, there are real homeowners and real people living in these homes. So a home is a home. Now, many of these mobile homes kind of contribute to this stereotype, right? And so I began my career in Appalachia. I lived in Kentucky my entire life. And so the prevalence of mobile homes has always been part of my landscape. I lived and worked in counties where more than a third of all the housing stock would be manufactured housing and many mobile homes. In fact, we think there's probably somewhere between 2, maybe upward 3 million mobile homes on the ground today. And at this point, in some areas of the country, these homes have outlived probably their useful life. And we do, as a country, need to think about effective replacement strategies for these homeowners. And these homeowners, on average, are an income of about $22,000 a year, right? So it's an expensive proposition to really get at this problem with some of our poorest families in the nation. There's a prevalence of homes in the persistent poverty regions of the country. So Appalachia, I saw it firsthand, but also in the Colonias, the Delta, it's also used a lot in farm worker housing and on our native lands. It seems that these homes also don't fare well in national disasters, flooding, right? Because the code has advanced so much and the installation that homes done right can fare much better in those situations. So really, though, I think there is a recent narrative shift. It's a result of hard work many stakeholders and colleagues represented in the room, and a lot of credit to the home builders who've continued to raise the standards on these new modern manufactured homes and cross-mod homes. That's really changed this narrative. While we have this problem, we've also got a future and solution that I think has changed the narrative. And at Next Step, we partnered with IKEA on a national home buyer study. We were really interested in the younger generations and what they thought about homes built in factories. And, we found that 46% were interested, right? And I thought that was significant. And that's the shift that we're seeing now, I think, for the future.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, it is. I always joke that young people are taking the right kind of approach and thinking about it, and that you wouldn't buy a luxury Italian sports car that was made in a field, so why would you think about your house being built in the same way? It's going to be faster, more efficient inside a facility. I'm wondering if you guys can speak a bit about the various key stakeholders that we have in ensuring manufactured housing continues to be a method of home ownership that's both successful and attainable to those low and moderate income households.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, of course, I think I'm paid to say the secondary mortgage market, right?
Right.
So when we buy loans, we provide lenders with the funds that make them able to provide more loans, which is what we're all trying to get to, especially to the populations that Stacy just talked about, those that are at those low levels. When it comes to lenders, we need more lenders in this space. It's just the way it is. There just are not enough options for these home buyers. Also home buyers and homeowners look to housing counselors and real estate professionals as trusted advisors. So their place is really important in this too. So what I'm working with my team and with these two trusted partners is really the education piece. Stacy talked a little bit about the myths and misconceptions. Leslie has talked about the code and the importance of that in making these homes. And we just want to make sure as a collective group that we are sharing with the industry the benefits of manufactured homes to provide opportunities to support the market.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that just as we have a range of homes for different options, for infill versus, in rural America, we also have a range of options in terms of how the homes are placed. And so that speaks also to who the key stakeholders are. Of course, between HUD and the home builders, that's the work that's done to construct the homes. We also have our lenders that work closely across the board with government. We believe that if there's a federal mortgage program that supports homeownership in America, that manufactured housing should be a part of that program. We also believe that there are a lot of affordable housing. We're the largest form of unsubsidized affordable housing. And the reason I say it that way is that over time, many affordable housing programs have been developed at the federal level or the state level, and it explicitly excluded manufactured housing as part of those programs. And in this administration, one of the things that was worked on was to eliminate some of those exclusions within those programs so that we could have nonprofits and others, local governments, utilize manufactured housing to address those housing needs. So those are important stakeholders. There's also the model that is very important, and that is what we like to call the land lease communities model. And that is where an individual can become a homeowner by owning their home, but they're leasing their land. We refer to it as hybrid homeownership. And these land lease communities are just a wonderful, it's creating that sense of neighborhood, creating the amenities that are needed. And what all of our surveys show is that people love living in these communities, and it's a more attainable price point. If the choice is renting, where you have restrictions and you don't have your own open space, you have to share walls with others, that's not as attractive as a choice of having your own area. You can paint the walls, you can live the way you want and have a garden. And so the land lease community model, I think they're also very important stakeholders. There's also a model where nonprofits have partnered to make sure that, through a community land trust or whatever, that you've got the manufactured home And then the land is you're just buying the house. And so that also is creating affordability. And then, of course, we have through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac programs, the financing of both the home and the land. So there's lots of different ways to enjoy manufactured housing for home ownership in a lot of different applications. And I think it's important to think through all of those different stakeholders. Obviously, what we're trying to do is serve the need where it exists. And we really believe that because of the range, the flexibility of the type of homes and the flexibility in the placement, that really is an important answer. One thing that I do want to point out when we talk about the range of homes is that we're working to continue to increase that range of homes. And we've got legislation pending before Congress to allow us to have different elevations. It's about chassis and building the house on the permanent chassis so that it can be transported to the site. But what we're finding is that really limits us in terms of, the appeal, the curb appeal. And then also we really want to move to 2-story, and you really don't need a steel frame up above. So that limits our design features. So anyway, so the stakeholders really are the people, but there's, just different ways of achieving ownership through our model.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. One thing that is not unique to our industry is NIMBYism, right? I recently heard a term, bananas. I don't know if you guys have heard that. They build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. So we face that. I would say that we have like NIMBYism plus because we have the stigma stereotypes that we've talked a bit about. Stacy, I know we've partnered together and you guys have really championed and led a lot of great work as it relates to zoning reform and creating new opportunities because, the history of our industry is that we're always about 10% of single-family housing starts, and you can pretty much take any major metro and draw a large circle around it, and we're just outside that circle, right? We've not been able to go participate in those urban, suburban markets where we can be, as Leslie mentioned, market rate affordable. And I know you guys are working on a white paper now. I'm wondering if you can just share a bit more about that work and how you see us addressing those, challenges in zoning to create more pathways and opportunities for home ownership.
Okay, sure, thank you. Well, first of all, I think zoning is perhaps the largest barrier we have working with our developer partners. At Next Step, those stakeholders are mission-aligned developers. Everything from, the nonprofit or the habitat doing the work on the ground, all the way to the tax credit developer that may be using a manufactured housing for lease to purchase or, anchoring a big multifamily with single-family lots, just to kind of get that scale. So they're challenged with zoning, right? So what we're excited about today is that we are releasing a white paper on zoning and manufactured housing, identifying kind of the challenges, the opportunities, some of the techniques used, documented in case studies about how these developers are overcoming some of these challenges in some of these municipalities. It's also really a guide for city officials, really how to look at this issue in their own community. We're on the ground in many markets talking to these cities, helping them navigate change. And what's exciting is we're really seeing them, open up and making the change, not only one time giving a variance for a project, but really opening it up citywide. So manufactured housing, and we're seeing particularly cross mods, are really equal to site-built housing as long as it's going on a permanent foundation, which is a real tool for affordable housing in these communities. Yesterday we were out in Hagerstown, Maryland, and with a delegation from Nebraska, looking at a development of 238 homes. And the city planning official, talked about the project, and it really just came down that this was a quality home and that it was going on a permanent foundation. Check, okay. And that worked really well. But, we've seen other communities where we might be educating for 2 years before we could finally get a vote and win, maybe by one vote, to move a project forward. So we're really excited about that paper. I think when you approach this, for manufactured housing, it's about getting a lot of different stakeholders under the tent, okay? And it's really maybe about thinking about not just a city, but how to get people at the state level, really thinking about how do we remove those barriers. For quite a while, we've seen states like California, Oregon have, laws that say you really can't discriminate against manufactured housing at the city level. And so that really opens pathways for development, right? And now we're seeing more traction with more states, and I think we're going to talk about one a little bit more since we were out in Maryland yesterday as an example, so.
Yeah. I was I was going to say, I think, in terms of states doing what I personally think is best, both for the industry as well as, future homeowners, because it does create those new opportunities and pathways. And if you don't have the market available, developers just simply aren't going to go bang their head against the wall and not get anything done, right? And so, so Maryland has had a unique and interesting approach, the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act, that, has essentially remove the discrimination against manufactured housing if it's being placed on that permanent foundation. I'm wondering if you guys can kind of describe the benefits of that initiative and how that's impacting things and what you see as the future opportunity in that state. And, how can other states, I'd love to see them copy paste, right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I'd love to talk about it. I think it's a major step forward in the manufactured housing space that, Maryland's Governor Morris described it as a comprehensive tool in helping to solve the state's 96,000 housing unit shortage. And it's a big win. And, now they join a handful of these other states. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the great things about this legislation that it's addressed a whole host of other challenges to creating more supply. So that's really about getting a lot of different stakeholders under that tent. It's not just manufactured housing, they're looking at other barriers. I think it really helps us address, workforce housing too, and that missing middle housing. I hate to say that, I've heard this now that the 80% is now the 120, right? We feel like we've really moved up, and we've got to solve these problems for people who are going and working these jobs are just now missing out on housing, and this is a way to do it. And I think we're gaining momentum. Just on Friday, we're just reading this, so I don't have all the particulars on it, but there's now an appellate case in Tennessee that has opened up zoning in the state of Tennessee to make basically cross-mod equal to, it seems, site-built housing, right, in terms of zoning. So more to learn on that. And definitely, I think we'll be amending our white paper as we learn more to look at that opportunity too.
Yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape, certainly. I'm wondering, do you guys know of, outside of Maryland, Tennessee, are there other state, local initiatives that you guys are aware of that have helped move the needle, create new opportunities?
I feel like I've been on the U.S. tour for the last year
Yeah.
of manufactured homes, and luckily enough, I was able to be at the grand opening of Kilpatrick Woods, and then I was lucky enough to join Stacy there yesterday with the congressman's delegation. And the other place that I've been recently that Leslie talked about hybrid home ownership, right? So the Kilpatrick Woods is a perfect example of that situation where the manufactured homes are sitting in a community where it's fee simple lots, right? So you own your land and you own your home. This Detroit, so tomorrow's Housing Innovation Showcase in Detroit, just put 7 new homes in Corktown, North Corktown, in the city of Detroit. So you talked a little bit about the difference between, can we get manufactured housing into urban situations as opposed to just more these outside situations? And in that case, those are also manufactured homes, but those are being built on a community land trust. So I think this just underscores the need for understanding that there is not one solution that's going to fit all places. There's a need for communities. There's a need for the fee simple, like the Kilpatrick Woods, and there's a need for the This Detroit with the Community Land Trust, because not, just like each state is different, their housing considerations are different too. I think the one thing that I will say about these communities, whether it be the land lease community, the community in Kilpatrick Woods, what I love about this is that in Kilpatrick Woods, all these homes are facing one another. So they have front porches that face the street, and it really is getting back, for me, to the need for community in the US, right? We just need to be kinder to one another. We need to talk to our neighbors. And these communities are fostering that, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's agreed. And, I hope I don't get in trouble with anybody on our PR team, but we've had Consumer Insights say that, like, front porches are incredibly desired, especially with younger
Yep.
buyers,
Yeah,
because
yep.
they want and
what our
crave
study
that
showed.
sense of
Yeah.
community. They want a place to congregate and meet with their
Yeah.
neighbors. So, yeah, that's fantastic.
So Ramsey, before you move on, I do want to say that we've got a lot of examples around the country. In Jackson, Mississippi, there's been work done there. In North Carolina, the mayor of Raleigh also leaned in and made some changes. Atlanta, inside Atlanta, you're
Yeah.
very familiar with that, I'm sure. In Austin, Texas, and other places. MHI is partnering with HUD, and we're actually doing a research project to create an index that we can really look at, that cities and localities can look at themselves and say, okay, where are we on this index? What are the kinds of things that make it more likely that you are going to be able to accept manufactured housing into your locality? We're also showcasing homes at the National League of Cities. We're in talks with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to be a presence at their events. What we find across the board when we're out talking to these local officials, and it's what we've always wanted, we don't want to force it down their throats. We want to say, look at this. And traditionally, or typically what we're seeing is they say, yes, please, how do we bring more of this into our community because it's brand new? And it's not just the beautiful cross mod, it's the fact that we've got these great houses at all. How many of you saw our houses on the National Mall thank you for going to that. Every June, we were bringing houses to the National Mall, and it's the smallest, the accessory dwelling unit, the single section, the duplex, all the way up to the cross mod. And people are just blown away and impressed by all of them, because there are those different applications. And so in New Orleans, we did infill, and that was the single section. You're familiar with that project as well. So anyway, there's a lot of work being done. What MHI's research has showed, if you look at that entry-level consumer population, they're very interested. They're very willing to consider, because their alternative is renting. And what our numbers show is it actually costs more to rent in your all-in housing cost than it does to own your own brand-new house. They also like it better because it's housing without compromise, where they're not having to buy a house and think about their job and their family. And, oh, by the way, we have this whole fixer-upper project. But that's the only thing at the same price for them. And so we've got a lot of opportunity at that level. The challenge when you talk about these zoning officials and others, it's that stigma exists from where manufactured housing, if you don't show them pictures and show them the house, it's all about where you grew up. What's your impression? For me, I grew up in California. I grew up on a dirt road in rural California, but my impression of it was going to grandma and grandpa's house and playing tennis and getting to go to the swimming pool. So I have it's like going to the resort, right? That's a very positive impression. Other people have a different impression. So what we have to do as the Manufactured Housing Institute is show these local officials, this is what we're talking about. Take out of your mind what you think. Let's show you what it looks like today. And that's really opened up a lot of opportunity instead of us going, we have our state affiliates, and we go and we try to overcome these barriers, but it's really to show them. The cross mod's the easiest because it looks just like it's indistinguishable from a site built, but there are other opportunities. We're at this very unique point in our nation's history where it doesn't matter which constituency it is. Everybody's in need of affordable housing right now. And what I think has been drawing people to us is the quality of what it is that people can attain.
Yeah, certainly. I think with most any issue facing our industry, education.
Right.
The more, they're saying if we can get people to come in and walk a home, whatever stigma, stereotype, or preconceived notions you have, all fall to the wayside. And if you get inside a facility and you see how it's built, you're never not sold, right? So it's a lot of opportunity, and really appreciate the great work that you're all doing to help that education. We've talked a little bit about the zoning policies, local, state policies, and things that have helped us, grow the industry. Aaron, I'm wondering if you can speak to us a bit about, some of the steps Freddie's taking to support growth in the sector, from a financing perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the introduction of Duty to Serve years before I even started at Freddie Mac, while I was still at NCST, when we had that situation, we have since then, and manufactured housing. For those that aren't familiar with Duty to Serve, Ramsey, you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but manufactured housing, rural housing, and affordable housing preservation are the three sort of pillars of our plan. And since 2018, we've made dozens of policy updates supporting manufactured housing, and we continue to try to sharpen our focus on that. MH is an eligible property type for many of our offerings. Stacy talked a little bit about the need now for replacement and renovation of these properties. Our Choice Renovation does support manufactured housing. And the CrossMod homes, we have a specific product that will support those with a down payment as low as 3%. I love the fact that we have gotten to the point where we're able to use the site-built homes as comparables for these homes, because in the end, this is not me, I'm taking this from somebody else, but it's just housing, right? It's just housing. So the other piece that we're really focused on now is this supply problem. So we have a developer program, which provides technical assistance to emerging developers building affordable homes in these underserved markets. We're going to be expanding it next year into the manufactured housing space, partnering with Next Step and others to build out a curriculum to encourage folks to utilize manufactured homes, because it's different, right? It's different than building with site homes. And with CrossMods, both Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have requirements that must go along with those. So they need to have the porches, they need to have the garages, things like that. The Developer Academy then will have specific training modules for folks that are interested in doing this. And I love what you said about the folks, getting to see the properties. Commissioner Gordon, Leslie and I were with Commissioner Gordon, and she calls the National Mall project the petting zoo for the federal government on manufactured housing, and I absolutely loved that. But, in addition to that, I've been lucky enough to go into a factory, and you're absolutely right. I am sold. I'm 100% sold. I have an 18-year-old looking to buy his first house. Gosh darn it, it's going to be a manufactured house, because that's all he can afford as a full-time mechanic. But, I think the other thing, too, is HUD has made great strides over the past couple of years in expanding the opportunity for manufactured housing. And so we at Freddie Mac certainly need to keep up with that, right? We need to make sure that our policies and our products are keeping up with the innovative things that are happening in your industry.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm gonna jump around a little bit, because, as I'd said before, I have to restrain myself to not talk so much about CrossMod, because I am so passionate about it. But it's come up a couple of times, so I would like to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about CrossMod, because it is, I would say, one of the more innovative housing solutions that our industry has brought to market, and something we're really excited about. That, as you mentioned, can appraise as a one-to-one with site-built homes. Stacy, I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about what CrossMod homes are, and how they can come in and play an important role in that housing supply gap that we're trying to solve for.
Yeah, sure. So, initially Leslie did a great job of explaining what a CrossMod is. So I'll just talk a little bit more about it. There are the benefits of better financing, appraisals based on site-built comps, better build quality. I think also it's really about getting the home blended into the marketplace in neighborhoods and in new subdivisions. And it's the appeal of the home is the site-built appeal, if you will, the aesthetic, the roof lines, what I call a lower profile set to the ground, right? Often you're going to have, garages and carports. So you're going to get a lot of curb appeal, I think, with these CrossMod homes. And what we're finding is that once you start showing these photos, to municipalities and to developers. You get more people excited about taking on these projects, right? So we're now seeing more and more developers beginning to have these conversations about how to use this CrossMod product. And, you know, I think it's also from Next Step's perspective, because these homes go on an engineered foundation, that we think about it as really the best opportunity for wealth creation for that home buyer. We marry home buyer education and support to these good mortgages that they get with these products, right? And so we want to make sure that we're setting these families up for the best success. That's how we measure our success, that they really partake in the American dream and earn equity, right? And so I think it's just a great opportunity within this manufactured housing space to kind of amplify that and accelerate that wealth creation. So I think that's why it's so important, but also it's about cost, right? So, you know, yesterday we had a question. The homes at Kilpatrick Woods range in price from $285,000 to $375,000. And the question was, well, what is the site-built comparable? And well, the realtor said, well, really there's not one, but you know, site-built in that market, I think he said started at about $475,000, okay? And so, you know, we just, the developers completed and got CO on the first 3 homes and contracts on all of them within 30 days, right? And we expect another one today. So I think that's what's encouraging, is that you can really meet the market. Okay, and I want to say overall about manufactured housing, like we know the typical American family median income, we're somewhere in that $75,000 range, probably should be affording a house between $225,000 and $250,000. There is one place left in my mind in the country where you can get a house for that price, and it's going to be the manufactured housing industry. And in some markets, we can get this CrossMod to about that level. Okay.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you so much. And you know, Erin, I'm wondering if, you know, we've seen FHFA and the GSEs have taken a lot of steps to help support the industry, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about how Freddie specifically is supporting CrossMod with new financing options.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked a little bit about our Choice Home product as well as the Choice Renovation products. I think, you know, the other thing we all need to think about is there are a couple of different models, right, for a manufactured home, brand new manufactured home. You can go the retailer model, which is, you know, you're going out, you're taking a look at the homes on the lot, you're saying, okay, I love this one, I want you to move this to my site. Then you've got the Kilpatrick Woods model where it's effectively a new housing development. You can walk through the different models. You can purchase one of them that are there, or say, hey, I would love to be in the next subdivision, part of the subdivision that's being done. And I think that that is one of the most attractive things. So at Freddie Mac, we are really trying to shine a bright light on those types of models, simply because it is more like the experience that people think that they should have, right? Absolutely. Being able to walk into a home with streets, with walking trails, and see that community. But again, there is the need for both. You know, I cannot say enough how important it is that there are multiple solutions, and all of them are needed to be able to solve this crisis. You know, we are really excited about the growth of CrossMod, and I think the key here too is, you know, Stacy hit the nail on the head. This is going to be the almost only affordable solution left. Right now, I have a child that just graduated from college. He's living in my basement. I have a child that is a full-time mechanic. I'm paying his rent. I mean, you know, there just aren't these options for these young people that really want to live in community.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, you know, I think to your point about how consumers are coming to engage with those, I know that for us, the CrossMod developments and projects we've done, near 100% of the buyers are coming to us through Zillow, right?
Correct.
They're shopping, they're watching Netflix and browsing on their phone. They find a home that serves their needs at a price point that they can afford, and it's opening us up to, you know, folks who we have always made economic sense for, but
Yep.
for a number of reasons, we weren't entering into that consideration
It's a
set.
stigma piece, right? So it takes away that stigma of, oh, I'm going to buy my house on a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of lots of homes versus I'm going to buy my home in a community.
In a neighborhood.
So I do want to add to that and say, it's not that someone is, it's not substandard either.
No,
Just because it's
definitely not.
affordable.
Absolutely not.
It does not mean that it's not quality. And what we see is that this is much better quality than
Oh, yeah.
something at a similar price point that was built 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
That's their only other option. We believe that people will get to the point, like what you were talking about, Ramsey, with the sports car, where it's like, why wouldn't you buy your house if it's constructed to factory precision? Of course, you would want to buy that. The recent hurricanes in Florida really demonstrated the resilience of the manufactured homes. And Governor DeSantis commented about the construction quality across the board for housing in Florida. And that actually included the mobile homes because they do a retrofit program to make sure that those homes are anchored properly. Back in the day, some had not been, but Florida has really leaned in on that. So when it comes to storms, what we've been able to demonstrate is the resilience that comes. But it's just that quality, like your kids, they're
Yep.
gonna have the electrical outlets they want and all the smart features that they want, all the finishes they want, the natural light. It's just a better product overall. And oh, by the
agree
way,
more.
thanks to the partnership with the federal government and the regulatory efficiencies, it's the most affordable
Yeah.
house that's produced.
It's great.
So-
I mean, they have dog washing stations. Who does?
Right.
I brought a little of my corgi with me this
Yeah.
morning on my sweater. But the things that are in the finishes and the amenities that are in these homes, I'm telling you, my home was built in 1986. I would much rather upgrade.
Right.
And it would be an upgrade for me
Yeah.
to move into one of these homes.
Yeah, certainly. The first time I was ever able to get my wife to come out into her home, the first time we walked into a primary bath,
Yep.
she was so mad that ours looked absolutely nothing.
I know,
like that.
Yeah.
She was
right?
like, why didn't you told me? I was like, I've tried.
No,
you know,
I'm telling you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So knowing that our industry is not, a lot of times I think folks can think of it as a monolith, right? You say manufactured housing and that's a home, a type, a price, right? And that's not the case. And we know that there's been a lot of progress in state and local work. So going back a bit to zoning, knowing that we have this myriad of options and things that we can do, and we've seen some progress at state and local levels. It has been great, incredibly encouraging, right? But that's it's going to take a long time to win it, municipality by municipality, right? If you're trying to win every little city and county and township across America, it's going to be challenging. So I'm wondering if any of you could speak to what you see as the role of the federal government in helping, enact those changes and enable, further adoption of this, attainable housing solution.
We had legislation that passed a few years ago. Oh, well, it was language included in an appropriations bill, of course, the spending bill. However, what it said was that if there's a locality that's receiving HUD funding, they all have to submit their consolidated plans to HUD, and it's their affordable housing plan. As a part of that, they must consider manufactured housing. They don't have to use it, but they must consider it. So that at least gets them thinking about that. And so we think that interventions like that are helpful. I think everyone who's here today, you've got your spheres of influence as well. We really believe that we just need to change the hearts and minds. Like I said, we've got our state affiliates that are out there. It's really about identifying the need. Of course, we need willing partners. So thank you, Stacy, for your work, and thank you, Ramsey, for Clayton's work. But it is going to take those specific, unique cases to make this happen. MHI, like I said, we're working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We're working with the National League of Cities. I went to the National Association of County Economic Development Officials to talk about it, but it's very specific and unique. We see in Virginia that there's been a lot of work done as well, to overcome some of these challenges. But really, it's bringing everyone together, communicating about the solutions, and that's where we are. There has been legislation pending at the federal level to provide, for instance, technical assistance to the localities so that they can update their their zoning codes. That's great if the federal government wants to go in that direction as well. You're never going to see too much lean in. Even when we were talking with Julia the other day, Aaron, and it's very much zoning has been reserved to that state and local level. But I do think we've been able, through Freddie Mac leadership, Fannie Mae, through the just the elevation of affordable housing across the government on both sides of the aisle. I do think people are taking a look at us, and then we just have to do the work.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
that's very true.
You know, I always like to dream. So, you know, Leslie talked about the consolidated plans that you have to consider manufactured housing. So if I could dream and wave my wand, HUD would read those, and for, you know, as they're competing for their federal dollars, that maybe they got points for removing barriers
Right.
for manufactured housing and or opening up their zoning more, right? So I think that's a change that we should think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when it, and you're right about that resistance at the state, local, federal level to impact local zoning, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much a believer of less is more when it comes to zoning, right? I mean, there's one thing of like, let's not build chemical plants next to elementary schools, but housing types, let's maybe open that up to let, you know, the market develop the solutions that we know can work. So, you know, all those are, you know, Crossmont initiatives, the, you know, impact and change to zoning, that's often for new development, right? But we know there's, as you guys have mentioned, a number of manufactured homes still out in the marketplace today. Excuse me. I'm wondering if you guys could speak to what kind of federal initiatives exist, more related less to the construction and development of new homes, but the preservation of existing communities and manufactured housing.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. So there is a new program at HUD called PRICE. It's the Preservation and Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement. I had to read that. That's a lot. It's about $235 million. It was a competitive grant funding program for preserving and revitalizing like the land lease manufactured housing communities and also manufactured housing. So it's the first time that I'd seen a dedicated source of funds. We could ask the question, now can we do mobile home replacement with new Energy Star and really energy efficient homes? And the answer was yes. So this program is going to run, no announcements have been made, so let me make that clear. They're going to run it under the CDBG statutory and regulatory framework. There were about I think over $2 billion in requests for, you know, these funds. And we saw every type of application from cities, nonprofits, resident ownership, community type projects, mission owned projects. And so I think that's exciting that a lot of cities took interest in taking a look at this work. We hope to hear an announcement on these funds. You know, it'd be nice if we knew by the end of the year, but we're waiting on this. What's kind of exciting, I think, about it is that it's because we described the issue that people living in these homes, typically in the persistent poverty regions, have very low incomes. And so subsidies are probably the best way, really, to tackle the issue. And we have watched programs across the country try this, and then that's one of the lessons learned. You can't put too little money out to get people really to make such a huge life decision to actually, remember, a home is a home, right? You're asking them to give up their home. That's a lot, right? And so it takes quite a bit of incentive to do this work. But what we have seen, and I've done it personally, is that, you know, I've seen energy savings anecdotally from homeowners at 75%. I've seen an elderly woman that had a utility bill that was hundreds of dollars, which was, you know, about more than 30% of her income just for her utilities. And then afterwards, you know, that it was significantly reduced. So, you know, from a story and real life person, these programs can be powerful. We don't know how this is going to work yet, though. I think, new programs, right, will time, so time will tell. I know that there will be a lot dedicated to, getting the data and seeing how this industry does with this type of program.
Yeah, excellent.
Can I just comment on that
yeah,
too,
please.
please? So that was a funding, congressional directed funding from a retiring, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee on the House side, Chairman Price. And he had a land lease community in his congressional district that was in danger of the use changing to something else, shopping mall, whatever. Our challenge with the older, you could call them trailer parks, the older mobile home parks, is that not only are the homes old, but the communities themselves, the infrastructure is aging. And so what he sought out to do was to create a program that would support the preservation of those communities, because what these communities are, they're mini cities, and you've got an owner of the land that's dealing with the infrastructure and all of the updates under the dirt. And so there's a lot of work there, but you also have a population of people living there who have been off from, they're not receiving Section 8, they're not receiving government assistance for their housing. So the recognition was, this has been a form of unsubsidized for so long, why not have a federal program to provide some support? So that was his idea. It did not pass as a program. He just did it through the appropriate process, which that's what we see happen a lot in Congress today. So this is a one-time tranche of funding. I do think what we need to look at when it comes to that older housing stock, there's an eligible use for replacement, but given the limited funds and the needs on the ground for these communities, it's not going to really go that far. There was one applicant who asked for $90 million, and they anticipated only helping 247 families. So it doesn't pencil in that way, and that's where we really need to see the data. However, what we know is going to happen next year is a tax reform. We know that the low-income housing tax credit that has allowed for for-profits and nonprofits to agree to long-term affordability has been really important in the multifamily space and important in site-built space. MHI is encouraging more of that kind of a model to help more people. We're actually encouraging a conversation about incentives for people to do a home replacement. So it's specifically to Stacy's interest, which is let's move away from these mobile homes. I have talked to people who say, well, we really love our house and we're older, we would never take a federal loan to buy a newer house. This is just what it is. And that's where the anchoring program, the retrofit programs are helpful. But at the end of the day, Chairman Price said that if this program isn't for everyone, for the land lease communities and for everyone to come together, then it's not going to work. And so as a trade association, we're a little bit concerned about how this has been rolled out. We're looking forward to see who the recipients are, but some of those applicants, it doesn't make sense for $90 million to only go to 247 households. So we're looking at other solutions in the tax form as well.
Yeah. I heard you guys mention a number of times energy efficiency. And, when I think about preservation, you often lead to replacement. And we know, as some of the examples you shared, Stacy, of the kind of impact that can have on a family and their month-to-month utility costs of going from a pre-76 HUD code home to a home, built to today's energy efficiency standards can be, dramatic. I'm wondering if you guys could all kind of speak to how your work's prioritizing energy efficiency and see how you see that working within the industry at large.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, we've always led with energy efficiency. It's directly in our mission statement, right? And so when we got started, we always held our standard to the Energy Star standard. And, at that time, I think the industry was somewhere around 9–10% overall in terms of the number of Energy Star homes. We've seen that dramatically rise over time, and that it's becoming more and more the norm, right, to help have really sustainable home ownership and lower those operating costs, because it's really about the total cost of home ownership, right? And but we also last year really kind of set our sights on the Department of Energy's new zero energy ready home. And we knew at Next Step we wanted to lead with our housing specifications, because we hold a really high standard. But we weren't sure how we would get there. And thank goodness our longtime partner, Clayton Homes, jumped right in
I was
there
about
and
to ask,
said,
do you know any builders
I do
who
know anybody.
maybe stepped in
So
and
we're
helped
going to
with
build
that?
all our homes to this standard, which on our strategic plan, we just went, check, okay, that's wonderful, right? So it is about, I think, being a market leader in this, and I hope to see, and I think we've seen another factory certified, but more and more, follow this trend, because I think it can reduce the utility cost to homeowners by at least 50%. And, I think that we'll see innovation around solar, and we're excited. We're actually working in Wisconsin with the Habitat for Humanity of Greater La Crosse, and Clayton is the developer builder on this project, and we're going to be doing all the zero energy ready homes, but also some solar. So I'm committed to getting the right team in place for the case studies to show how well this project will do.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
I mean, I'm lucky enough to have to do energy efficiency as part of my duty to serve plan. But the great news is it is something that we all need, right? We all need to deal with this. I think, from what Leslie talked about, one of the folks want to stay in their homes, right? These older folks want to stay in their homes, but that shouldn't mean that, and I told this to Stacey yesterday, having been in Arizona at a conference and being able to hear some anecdotes about what's happening with manufactured housing there, and people are literally dying in their homes because they are not energy efficient. They don't have the air conditioning. Their homes, inside their homes, it's getting to 120, 140 degrees. It's crazy. So what we're trying to do at Freddie Mac is take what's already out there and get it into the hands of people, right? So you talked about education. Mm-hmm. I am firmly, former school teacher, I am firmly in that place as well to say we need to educate people on the resources that are out there that can help them for free. There's greenhouse gas reduction funds, there's various energy efficiency rebates, grant dollars. Several of the federal home loan banks are doing grants for different types of energy efficiency. And so really what I feel like my job is to be a cheerleader for all of these things that are happening. The work that Clayton's and Next Step are doing with the Zero Energy Ready, really just getting the message out there to say, hey, did you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will take this moment to do a shameless plug for my organization. That we are very proud of the fact that that move to Zero Energy Ready is universal across the board for all of our homes. So regardless of price point, every family who owns a Clayton home, moving forward is going to benefit from that 50% reduction in utility costs. And I think there'd been something like 13,000 total homes done over a 10-year period that met that certification. We've built over 30,000 homes now that meet that standard. So something we're really really proud of.
And I mean, that's the benefit of our industry, that we can take things to scale. Like, we're innovative. We love the innovation. When you look at the consumer research, you see that our customers, one of the top things they're looking for beyond affordability is energy efficiency. And so if you look at all across our manufacturers, there are things that have been injected over time. We were all building above the standard, the federal standard, when it came to energy efficiency. Stacey said some of them were Energy Star. It was interesting. When I started at MHI, I went out and I was like, why aren't you buying Energy Star houses? I would ask these community owners, and they were like, actually, we're buying all the features of it. We just don't want to spend the $1,000. Why add $1,000 to the cost of a house for someone just to have that label? We don't do that. And so I thought that was an interesting thing about the Energy Star program that maybe suppressed the numbers of our house. Because what I can tell you is we're innovative. Look at what you all did. When we had our houses on the National Mall, GAF, the solar shingle company, they actually put shingles on top of one of our houses that we had on display. And now that's just taking off that a number of the manufacturers are doing solar shingles. So innovation is a part of our DNA, and I think energy efficiency is too. And so it's really exciting to be the representative for this industry, knowing that the housing stock in America is getting it's really old. It's aging housing stock. And